what I'd like to say now is that when I look at governance, and it's how we go from here, I look at 4 levels. In my book, The Human Face of Corporate Governance, I suggested we looked at the systemic level, how everybody can influence the way that the whole total system in its complexity changes. We've had a huge amount of discussion about the importance of working together with civil society, business, and government. How can each one of us influence what goes on with the system? So that's the first one. And some people are better at working within the system, working with systemic change. We look at Phil Armstrong and we looked at Professor Frimpong. The second one, which has to do with systemic governance, is intergroup governance. That is to do with how good you are as a representative of your group and how you negotiate, you can use the word trade-offs, with other groups in order to have a win-win situation. Now, when I'm talking about trade-offs, I am not talking about compromising your integrity. That's the most important thing. Being flexible does not mean that you compromise what you truly believe you stand for. And it takes a lot of courage to do that. The next one, which I was talking about board dynamics, is your interpersonal relationships. How good are you at relating to the people that you work directly for, particularly at board level? Now, the boards which I've worked with some fabulous boards. I've also worked with good boards who have extreme difficulties to do with interpersonal conflicts, usually conflicts of power. I've also had chair people who say to me, I've just discovered that there's a conflict of interest or insider nonsense going on. What do I do about that? Sometimes the CEO is found to be actually highly corrupt, but has hidden it for a long time, and something then triggers or something when you discover a whole lot of other things going on. It's a dynamic situation where the quality with which you and your colleagues work together is crucial in terms of making good decisions. Yes, it's important to have a balanced composition. It's important to have independence of thinking. It's important to have the balance that you need on the board. But unless that board operates on a deep level in which they understand and ascribe to the principles and values of that board as a whole, and they trust each other, you're going to have problems. So the first thing that I would actually suggest with boards, and every good chairperson does this, some very often unconsciously, is to make sure that everybody is pointed in the right direction when it comes to values and expectations about how people behave and what is not acceptable. That takes time. And you have to give time in order to think about these things, particularly as I believe that we're going through a major paradigm shift and major historical global power changes. We've got to take those things into account and say, well, what does it mean to me and to us in terms of how we might have to change, and where we're willing to be flexible and where we're not willing to be flexible, and what are our strategies if different scenarios are played out. So the interpersonal side of it, I think, is pivotal in gaining the clarity of decision-making and the strength with which to do very often unacceptable or make decisions which are sometimes unacceptable. I, through many years of observation, realized that if a board member or a chief executive officer or a director has been found guilty of corruption or any other underhand activities, it is healthier for that company that that person leaves straight away. Now, most people don't want to do that because they have loyalty. But if they allow somebody to stay who has actually undermined the organization, the whole thing continues. It's a bit like having a plaque on your tooth or something like that. So there are difficult decisions. So for me, that's the interpersonal. And then the last bit of the level of corporate governance is personal. You've sat here for 2 days, and my question to you is, what are you personally going to do differently that is going to make a more effective decision? Because part of decision-making is thinking smart, not thinking more or thinking more detailed, but thinking strategically. How can we be so aware of our environment and what's going on and what we need to do that we can actually come up with the most effective ways in which we use our time, energy, and money to create the results we want? Asking the right questions is a good beginning for governance. And I think a lot of the right questions have been asked here. So the personal bit is very important. And what I'd like to invite you to do as a way of experiencing what it feels like if what transformation feels like if you have to fundamentally just slightly change your attitude or your way of being, is I'd like you to be aware of how you're sitting at the moment. So if you've got your left foot, your arms crossed, or if you've got your left foot over your right leg over the left leg, I'd like you to switch over to the opposite. If you just physically change the way that you're sitting. So completely, if you're leaning on your right hand, lean on your left hand.